Welcome to our 86th podcast. Today we're talking about HR and strategy with me, Hermie, the HR Hermit Crab. What's one thing you can do now to involve human resources in strategic planning and execution? Keep listening to find out.
Welcome to Harmonious Workplaces, a podcast about corporate culture, organizational change management, and workplace behavior. Harmonious Workplaces was started by independent consultants Rich Cruz, Ben Kleinman, and Cheryl Volpe to explore, challenge, and build on various organizational culture and change management concepts. It's a blend of theory and practice based on their personal and professional experiences working with companies of all sizes across various industries. If you own a business, lead a team, want new ideas about the corporate environment, or just want to listen to a group of consultants talking about how to make work more enjoyable, we invite you to sit back, relax, and dive in with us to Harmonious Workplaces.
Hello, Harmonious Workplaces listeners. As always, we are so glad you're with us today. I'm Ben Kleinman, joined by my special guest co-host, Hermie the HR Hermit Crab. Welcome, Hermie.
Hey, Ben, how are you? It's good to see you this morning.
It is such a treat to have you on the show, live in Crab.
Well,
That's awesome.
yeah, I'm so happy to be here. Boy, it's this is certainly a change of pace for me.
Well, it's a change of pace for us too, and it's awful kind of you to, pop in and give Rich the morning off. So we appreciate that. Thank you very much.
No problem. I'd like to say anytime, but boy, as you know, it's been really busy at work. So, I'm glad to have the chance to do it today.
Yeah, no, this is great. Hermie, you've got two books out now. You just published your second book, so I definitely want to dig into that and
Sure.
make sure that you have, plenty of time to talk through ways people can get a hold of you or ask you questions and take advantage of all of your HR expertise and knowledge. Um, but it seems like for today's conversation, it might make the most sense for us to talk just specifically about something that seems like it's top of mind for you, and your recent book really focuses in on this in terms of
Sure.
HR and strategy and why it's so important for HR to have a seat at the strategy table and not just be called in kind of as an afterthought. Does it sound okay if we talk about that for a little bit?
Ben, that's exactly why I'm here. And I can't wait to talk about this. This is great.
That's awesome. Let's do it. Let's dig in. Okay.
Right on.
So, Herbie, in maybe it doesn't come out this way in the pet shop, and maybe you don't see a lot of this with Boss Beta or some of your other colleagues, but in an ideal situation, tell me about what strategy means to you and what you would see as the value of strategy. And then I'll ask you the same thing for human resources and what's the value of human resources. Does that
Oh,
make sense?
that sounds great. I love it. Okay. So for me, strategy seems to come from a couple of different places. And when I look at like business planning, right? I mean, you've got to do your analysis and all that, before you plan, right? So, but everything really stems from vision, right? That's where we start. Like, what is it that we're all trying to attain? Right. And then from the vision, we move into the mission, which is driven by the values of the company. So you guys have talked a lot about culture and the
Yeah, we
workplace
like talking about that stuff because
for sure.
it's so fundamental to how you build something that can achieve that vision in a sustainable way.
Right. It's also one of those challenges that a lot of organizations have because, if you've got a culture that doesn't support what that vision is, then, you've got people who are stressed tremendously. Yeah.
Yeah,
That,
and it's
so
and it's please
yeah.
go ahead.
Well, I was just
Carry
going
on.
to say, yeah, so we've got vision, we got mission driven by values. Then we get into objectives, right? These are how are we going to achieve that vision, right? And so the objectives are all those, the goals, right? And it's only after the objectives are set, that strategy comes into play. And strategy really is, yeah. And Ben, look, man, you have an MBA, so you correct me on this, but the way I have always seen strategy is it's kind of that work breakdown package. It's the work that needs to be done in order to achieve each of those objectives. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it at a high level, strategy starts to help you build that bridge between what your mission is and the values that you have that will carry you towards that mission,
Sure.
and the plans and the detailed activities that will be the day-to-day for people doing the work. And so strategy sits in that nice juicy middle section where you can think through and plan out, map out how do we want to go about achieving what we want to achieve. And it helps you clarify what we want to achieve and how we want to do that and who's going to help us do that and how are we going to pay for it and what are all the other factors in the ocean that might be impacting how we do it. And then you can
I
start
see what
to,
you did there, the ocean.
yeah, you like that?
I
And
like that.
and
Yeah.
and then we can start getting into the really detailed plans. And so it's a really nice way of thinking about how do we start to concretize what we're trying to do.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, the after that strategy layer, right? I should mention that after that is like the tactical element, right? That's all those, like you said, the
Hmm.
day to day,
Yeah, the
those the
operationalization of that strategy becomes very much planning and executing and
right,
sort of what exactly are we going to do? Strategy is a little bit maybe higher level
higher
than
level. Yeah.
what someone's going to do hour after hour
Right.
on a treadmill, say. But
Right.
the the details of that tend to come through the operationalization and the execution of those things. That's really a tough word, so maybe we'll try to find a simpler word for that.
Oh man, I wish I could do that lip thing. La, la, la.
That was pretty good. That was pretty
Well,
good for hermit
uh,
time. So
with no lips.
no lips, yeah.
Yeah. Well, so how do I put this? Here's the thing, Ben, and why we came out with this, the latest book. So if anybody's unfamiliar, right, we have a new book, and it's HR Hermie the HR Hermit Crab, and it's called Out of the Loop Into the Fire, or HR Hung Out to Dry. Right? It's kind of a throwback to those old Rocky and Bullwinkle type of titles, right? And the idea behind that book was that HR gets oftentimes left out of the strategic process. But
Right.
then if you have to have a tactical layer, and that tactical layer has to be carried out by people, how do you leave that out of the process?
It's a head scratcher or a shell scratcher. I mean, it just makes no sense to me, right? So maybe maybe Hermie, tell me kind of from where you sit as a HR professional, what are some of the main functions or reasons why we would have HR and why they HR function should have a seat at that strategy table?
Yeah, that's
Like what is
I'm
Boss Beta
glad you.
missing?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you asked. And I don't think, I love Boss Bennett. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think he really has paid too much attention in his business classes. Sometimes don't let him know that I said that.
I wouldn't
So
dare.
yeah, he gets a little if you excuse the word, crabby about that kind of stuff. So anyway, uh, so human resources, the way that I've learned it is, it covers four basic functions, if that makes sense. Can I talk about those functions?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right on. Okay. So the first one is staffing, right? You got to make sure you get the right people into the organization, put them in the right places, and have them do the right things, right? So that staffing is that first component, and it's the one that we oftentimes think about, for human resources. The
And
go ahead. Yeah,
well, I was just thinking, staffing is so broad because even just as you're explaining, getting the right people into the right places,
sure,
you have to understand what the need is and what those places should be. Like, do you need someone at a certain treadmill, certain number of hours per day, or do you need a manager to oversee those people on the treadmill, or do you need someone to support something in a different way? And all of that is just my point is, and we can dig into it more if you want, Hermie, but my point is that
sure.
that staffing is so much more than just hiring, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So
Yeah. Oh,
please carry on.
I would love Ben to talk a little bit about that maybe after the first break because I think that'd be
Okay.
super.
So that's a really good idea. So let's do this. Let's round out the functions of
Sure.
HR that you were just talking about. So we've got
Yep.
staffing and then a couple more.
Staffing.
Then we'll
Hmm.
take a break and we'll
Yep.
come back and kind of unpack.
I love it.
Okay.
Okay.
So
So
we've
the
got staffing.
first one's staffing, right? Second one that comes to mind is learning and development or training and development, right? So that's
Mhm.
creating that learning organization that helps to make things happen, and of course, it's part of the innovation that occurs that sets an organization apart from the competition, right? So you've got again, staffing, learning and development. The third element is motivation, which I think oftentimes organizations fail to put HR into that motivation part of things, right? But it is a key function of human resources, and it's one of those things that the Society of Human Resources Management or the Association of Talent Development, they talk a lot about that because you need to be able to motivate your staff properly with, and there's a lot of different levers you can pull for that. I don't know why I said levers. I usually say levers, but that was weird. that's that's just me in the morning. Okay, anyway, so the fourth one.
And Hermie, I'm so
Oh
sorry,
yeah.
but there's just like you mentioned with staffing, there's so much we could talk about with learning and development, and you mentioned
Oh
how
yeah.
that sparks innovation, which is so important. And then the same thing with motivation, that your friend Rich and I have talked about motivation, and with Cheryl, we've talked about motivation for on and off our prior 85 episodes. And so that's a huge thing. That's so important. And that leads
Absolutely.
to resilience, which we've been talking a bunch about recently as well. And that's such a fundamental part of an organization's culture. So these functions that you're talking about are so broad and so high level.
Yeah,
I love it.
I
Okay,
agree.
I'm taking you off track.
Oh no.
What's our last what or what are some more functions? We've
Well,
got
so we got
staffing,
staffing,
learning and
learning and
development,
development,
motivation.
motivation, and the last part is the one I think that we really get lumped into a lot is which is super important. Don't get me wrong. We have to do this, and it's a very rewarding part of the job. But maintenance, right? Maintaining our that's retaining our current employees. That's also providing some of the safety measures and the necessary steps that we have to require or that we have to maintain our staff, right? To keep them. So it supports motivation, it supports L&D, it supports our staffing functions. It's all those benefits administration and all of those kind of nuts and bolts that we often talk about. Yeah,
Hmm. Hmm. And would things like the periodic reviews, or sometimes they're just annual reviews, go into that maintenance grouping, benefits,
absolutely. Yep, yep. It's
salaries,
the
all of it?
analytics and the
Right.
performance evaluations. All of that fits into
Okay.
that bucket. Yeah. So
Wow. So that's a ton. Awesome.
that's a lot, right? And then
Hermie,
how do we just like omit that?
well, you
It's
can't omit it because that's something super important to most people.
right.
I don't know about you guys in the pet shop, but most people like to get paid. So that can't go away.
That's right. You got to eat whatever it
Yeah.
is, whether you're a herbivore or an omnivore or a carnivore. Uh, or a pescador or whatever those things are. I don't know. Yeah, it's anyway, got to put food
Anyway,
on the table. Yeah.
yeah. Let's do this, Hermie.
Yep.
That's a good place to take a break and give our listeners a moment to kind of cogitate over those functions. And then why don't we come back after the break and start digging into each one?
I like it. Let's do
Okay.
that.
All
Okay.
right, friends. We'll be right back.
In a world where leadership needs clarity and action, and HR gets left out of the loop, one hermit crab steps in to save the day, only to be shut down by management. From the creators of Hermie the HR Hermit Crab and the Harmonious Workplaces podcast comes a new shell-shocking adventure, Out of the Loop into the Fire, or HR Hung Out to Dry. This book blends workplace satire with evidence-based lessons, reminding leaders that culture, trust, and people strategy don't exist as extras. They form the foundation of lasting success. Whether you work as an HR professional, a leader, or just someone who has survived a few too many staff meetings, Hermie's stories will make you laugh, think, and maybe even change the way you see your workplace. Purchase Hermie the HR Hermit Crab, Out of the Loop, Into the Fire, or HR Hung Out to Dry, now available on Amazon and Ingram Spark. Shop now at harmoniousworkplaces.com/Hermie HR Crab. That's harmoniousworkplaces.com/Hermie HR Crab.
Huh. Big change for Fred. And we're back. Oh boy, that felt pretty good to have that opportunity to do that. All right, Ben. So in this episode, we've been talking about human resources in the strategy process or strategic process, right? And so we were talking about the four functions before we went to the break,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
And you were telling us the four functions were staffing,
Right?
learning and development,
Yep.
motivation,
Check.
and maintenance.
Right on.
And all of those to me are so high level and encompass so many things within each one. And that's a great example of what we were talking about before in terms of strategy sits at a very, very high level that bridges some very, very visionary things with some very, very tactical things. And so
For sure.
strategy is sort of helping us figure out how we want to go about focusing on what we want to focus on with all the different constraints that we have. And so maybe, Hermie, since we can't get into the deep, deep weeds of each one of these right
Right.
now, and
Right.
we could think about spreading that out over a couple of episodes, but
Sure.
for right now, maybe let's start with staffing. And to me,
Yeah.
that seems like such a broad category. Tell me a little bit more about your thoughts on staffing and how that can really, really get so strategic and why that in particular needs to have you as an HR professional thinking strategically, acting strategically, and
Sure.
needing to have that seat at the strategy table.
Yep. Yep. So one of the things that comes to mind for me is, like you said, we have to know who needs to be in what, but in order to do that, right, we need to really be able to understand what work needs to be done to fulfill those objectives that we talked about, right? So there's two there are two analyses that fall into the HR realm. One of those is work analysis. So that's the jobs that the overall jobs that need to be done to fulfill whatever it is that we're trying to do, and those can be on a functional level, regional level. There's so that's so there's the work analysis, and then stemming from the work analysis, then there's the job analysis, and that's where HR really can shine, is to figure out what are all of the processes, what are the characteristics, from even a trait perspective, what are the some of the, of course, tasks that are required, level of skill, or some of those other things, right? Those are so job analysis, I think, is pinnacle and one of those elements that we may not think about when we're doing the strategic part of things.
Yeah, and it makes me think a little bit, Hermie, of something that you may have heard about in business school and other walks of life is just this idea
Uh,
that when you think about marketing, which is very strategic, you often think about jobs to be done. What is our customer trying to achieve? What is the job
right.
that that customer is trying to get done? And
Sure.
so the ideas that you're talking about, Hermie, and sharing here in terms of what HR is looking at in the staffing component of what HR does is very strategic. What is the work that needs to get done within the company, and
Uh-huh.
what are the jobs that need to exist to get those bits of work done? So it's very strategic and has that analog with the external facing.
Right. Well, I'm glad
Okay.
that you brought up, the whole reason why an organization exists. And what's the reason why an organization exists?
Well, according to Mr. Drucker, it's to have a customer, to create a customer.
That's right. Right. So if we have a customer and that's what, really drives quality, right? It's the voice of the customer or, Dad, I'm going to throw out an acronym. I'm so excited. I get to throw out an acronym. The, uh, the VOC.
Yeah, Hermie.
Right on.
Right
The,
on. Way to
the,
do it. High,
cool.
high claw.
Woo.
The voice of customer, I love that. And
Yeah,
it drives quality and it drives innovation and it in an ideal way motivates employees to do what they do day in and day out.
for sure. Yeah.
And I spend a lot of my time in the pharmaceutical and biotech worlds, Hermie,
Right.
and I see so many people across these organizations that make medicine or make medical devices just take so much pride in knowing that they've helped people live a day longer or live with a slightly higher quality of life. And I imagine it's the same across many other industries and even in your pet shop, the idea that you guys are bringing joy to families by helping them have pets.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yep.
And that can be super motivational. And I know that's a whole different function within HR, but it really starts to knit together and show how some of these functions are all knit together and it can't just be in isolation.
Yep. And we in our book, we kind of highlight some of the silliness that happens when we don't keep any of this in mind. Right. When like I remember in the first book, it was like, why are there you go. That's the first one.
This is this a much younger Hermie before you got all old and gray-haired from Boss Beta?
uh well, thanks for that, Ben. Like I was feeling at the top of the world, and now I feel like I gotta go and put a new shell on.
But but you're good at adapting and molting.
That's right. We molt, then and we move on. So I'll let that uh I'll let that slough off. Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
Oh
We'll just let it
yeah.
roll off the back of your shell. I
There
like
you
it.
go. We went there.
So first book,
Yeah, first book. That one of the gags. I'm just gonna spoiler alert, right? But one of the gags was, why do we have all these hamsters spinning on wheels? And and Cat, our manager, is like, I don't know. I just have to make sure that they spin on wheels, right? So certainly we have a lot to learn from a strategic standpoint, in terms of how HR, interacts with everybody for sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And making sure that everyone understands why we have hamsters and wheels and why they need to be spinning those wheels.
Right, right. And Cat, they're not a snack, Cat. Just making sure you understand that out in the public. I said it.
Yeah, yeah, maybe that's something that HR also needs to keep an eye on and serves a role, like you were saying, and maybe that falls into that maintenance
That
bucket of
maintenance part. Yep.
employee safety and adherence to policies and sort of supporting the values of a given pet shop, like don't eat the other pets.
Sure. Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Maintenance and to some extent motivation. I mean, how motivated is somebody going to be when they're always in that fight, flight, freeze, or fawn situation?
But it raises a good point, Hermie, that motivation for one employee, like Cat, can be very different from motivation for a different kind of employee, like one of the gerbils.
For sure. Yep. It
You
does
know?
vary, and there's another element why human resources people tend to be uh, strong in the strategic process because they have a tendency to want to understand the individual and the individual differences that occur within the organization, and that's something that is hard to do when you're thinking strategically because you're thinking of group dynamics more than anything, if that makes sense.
Higher level stuff. Yeah. So an HR professional has to sort of, pardon me, swim in both types of waters. They have to be that sort of higher level strategic thinker, thinking very broadly about the company, the organization, and
Right.
all of the industry stuff that's going on.
Yep.
And then they also have to understand maybe not every single person individually, but the types of people that are in a given organization or
Good
the
point.
types of things that might motivate someone in a given role or that might be important to maintain the culture for a given department or within a given function.
Absolutely. Yes, sir. And that's kind of where some of the L&D comes in too, though, is that you can do train the trainer or manager training or leadership training
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
helps. HR can't do all of that for all those individuals, but certainly we can help managers and leaders to identify and manage some of those differences for the betterment of the company, if that makes sense.
Right, right. And one of the things I don't know, Hermie, if you've noticed this in your world, in my world, I feel like in the last maybe 5 to 10 years, a lot of learning and development professionals and HR professionals have really come to recognize that you can't just talk about having different learning styles. You need to feed the different learning styles, different types of learning materials. And so there's written communications, there's
Right.
all sorts of more interactive communications, video, sound bites, infographics, those kinds of things, and they all
Sure.
play together. And then there's the one-on-one, the small group meetings, the town halls, the all-staff meetings where you have a way to interact with people. And so it seems like there's been more attention paid to meeting people's needs across those different ways of consuming things and ways of learning things. And I am curious if you've seen that too in your either in your pet shop or in the pet shop industry, or maybe even just within the conversations that you have with other HR professionals. But I've really enjoyed seeing that trend the last like 5, 10 years where it's become more alive.
Right. Well, why don't we do this, Ben? Because I would love to talk a little bit more about that, but I feel that we need a little bit of a break. What do you think?
Sounds great. That sounds
All
great.
right.
So we'll be right back and we'll talk about maybe how learning and development is meeting the needs of people across the business.
I like it. Let's do
Okay.
that.
We'll be right back.
At Harmonious Workplaces, we believe work should provide purpose, satisfaction, and growth. We empower people to thrive by fostering environments where individuals can find meaning in their work and organizations can succeed through thoughtful, well-executed strategies. We're committed to making work better for the people who do it and the leaders who guide them. To discover how harmonious workplaces can impact your organization, visit www.harmonious.com. harmoniousworkplaces.com and book a free 30-minute information session with one of our consultants today. Again, that's www.harmoniousworkplaces.com.
And we're back. All right. Thanks, Ben, for having me on today. This is just a great way to wake up in the morning.
It's been so fun. And how often do we get to hear directly from Hermie, the HR hermit crab? And I know that we're coming towards the end of our episode, and we've talked about a lot. We've talked about the need for strategy in general. We've talked about how HR really is supporting strategy for the entire company and how HR has a variety of different ways of doing that. Most recently,
Sure.
before the break, we started talking about learning and development, training, and all of the ways that human resources can support people who have different learning styles or different needs or consume information in a different way. So maybe let's talk a little bit more about that. And then I want to make sure that we have time for people to hear how they can contact you, how they can learn directly from you without me or
Sure.
Rich or Cheryl intermediating, and
Right on.
how you would like listeners to take away that one thing about
Awesome.
why HR needs a seat at the strategy table.
Perfect. Well, Ben, before we went to the break, you said something that was key, I think. And you said in the last 5 years, I think
Yeah,
that
I
so
think I've been seeing it 5 to 10 years, but I'm really curious what you've been seeing.
well, what was that catalyst 5 years ago that made us have to relearn everything, right? We had
Did that
that
hit you guys too in the
oh,
ocean?
oh boy, that's one of the reasons why we had to have a whole change and why I ended up in the workplace where I'm in. That the tide pools are great, but I had to move to the big city.
Oh, wow.
you
Yeah,
know,
so even the pet shop got hit. And so with COVID, that really changed a lot.
sure, sure. It just we've had to have people learn how to communicate in new and varied ways. Not just they're wearing personal protective equipment, right? PPE, or hey, I did another
Hermie,
acronym.
this is like acronym soup. I love
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah. That's what we do here, apparently. I feel like one of the family.
You're
All right,
fitting right in. This is great.
right on. Um, but then we had to learn a whole lot of different technology because there's so many different technologies that came out during that time. New processes. How do we do social distancing? And if anybody remembers, all of that, right? But we so I think we got into a point where that was accelerated, and now in the last 3 years, we've really had artificial intelligence in the spotlight. You had your last episode. I
Yeah, we
had
just
it.
talked about that.
Yeah, no, I just had a chance to watch it, and I was like, oh man, I just can't wait to be on this podcast because you guys are talking about stuff that's like near and dear to me. So, but yeah, we had to accelerate that learning, and so we've seen so many organizations adopting learning management systems, and we've seen the expansion of online learning. We've seen like Microsoft has their own thing, and the Project Management Institute has their own thing, yeah, and Google and so on and so forth, and Coursera and LinkedIn Learning, all those things are there, and these are tools that a lot of organizations are latching on to, and using that to train and develop their staff, or encouraging them to do some of their own, pave some of their own paths, which I think is very encouraging. I said a lot of stuff, Ben.
You did, and that's all great stuff. Yeah, I think it's fantastic. And you
What
see a
have you
lot of that
seen?
even in the educational space where people can
Right.
go to places like Udemy or Khan Academy and learn all sorts of topics. And some of that allows you to become a better student. Some of that is just pure curiosity and knowledge satisfaction and interests kind of stuff. So it's just great.
Yeah,
And um, hopefully though that is helping HR professionals be better able to be more tactical and realizing
sure.
different ways to bring people into a new career trajectory or give them new tools for their existing job where they might still need to do the same job, but they just have such a different way of needing to do it nowadays with all the new technology, or they just need to do it faster, or they need to do it in a slightly different way to satisfy a customer need. And so those different learning and development tools can be very helpful to actualize that learning.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
That I
And I
think
think
is
we're going to, yeah, we're going to see, I think we're going to continue to see the trend moving towards, how effectively can we uh, capture knowledge and then share that knowledge with other people, and it's really that intellectual capital, I think, that helps organizations to get more value.
and that like all of these things ties into other aspects of HR's functions in terms of not just motivation, but also maintenance and keeping
I
that culture healthy, keeping people knit together as a culture and
Yep,
helping people stay resilient within the company or the organization. So it's all just super, super tied together.
absolutely, I agree.
Hermie, I want to make sure that we have an opportunity for you to share a little bit more about how people can connect with you, how our listeners can ask you questions, or where they can find you, how they can find either your first book or how they can find your second book, and maybe just share some of the ways that you like to connect with people.
Ah, all right. Thanks, Ben. Again, thank you so much for having me on. I've been wanting to be on the Harmonious Workplaces podcast for like quite a long time. I'm kind of surprised it took you guys this long, but no hard feelings. Yeah, it is what it is. And you've had some other really great guests.
We have pretty hard shells, Hermie, and you'll have to forgive us. We don't molt as quickly or as gracefully as you do.
That's all right. You guys are walking the walk. So I like it. And so, yeah, if you want to get in touch with me, Herbie the HR Hermit Crab, you just go to harmoniousworkplaces.com/Hermie HR Crab. That's one place you can go. Or you could just type directly into your browser, HermieHRHermitCrab.com, and that'll take you right to the same place. And then when you go there, you're going to find all kinds of, first of all, the two books, right? The Hermie the HR Hermit Crab, the first one. And then the second new book that came out, which is Hermie the HR Hermit Crab, Out of the Loop, Into the Fire, or HR Hung Out to Dry. So that's the one with the dumpster fire and all that. So we've had a lot of fun putting those together. You can also join our mailing list there, and you'll be notified when we have our the Harmonious Workplaces newsletter, which also features some of my cartoons. So we put out a cartoon a couple of times a month, and you can download that cartoon as a PDF file that you can print off, or you can share it on social media. We have JPEGs and the like that you can share there, and we just want you to you know laugh at some of the ridiculousness of what happens in the workplace, right? So
Laugh, laugh. Thank you, Hermie. Laugh at it and also maybe come away with a few ideas about how to try to make life a little bit better or a little bit more harmonious at your individual workplaces too. And
right.
and that's important. Hermie, I'd be remiss if I didn't also say that people have a way when they go to your website or when they go to
Yeah.
the Harmonious Workplaces website, there's a
Yes.
way that they can ask you, specifically you, a question, and you'll answer that question. Would you like to share a little bit more about that?
Oh, I love to do that. Okay, so yeah, you can go to harmoniousworkplaces.com/ask Hermie. So if you go there, you can actually put in to the form that's on that website, that's on that webpage, your question, and we will turn that either into something that I will address here as myself as a video. We can turn it into a cartoon, or we can actually address that sometimes on the Harmonious Workplaces podcast. And we can do this either with your credit, crediting you for the idea, or anonymously. Either way works for us. But yeah, if you want to get your questions answered by a certified human resources crab, go to harmoniousworkplaces.com/ask Hermie and fill out that form, and we'll put something together for you.
Thanks, Hermie. That's fantastic. And I'm just curious if you had to tell our listeners one thing that they could do now to make sure that human resources gets involved and stays involved in that strategic planning and strategic execution, what would that one thing be?
One way that you can get human resources more involved. Well, Ben, I think the most important thing is to continue to. Well, I guess I don't know, Ben. For me, it would be making friends within the organization and using some of those social connections. I was trying to come up with something a little funny on on this, but really, from being all serious in this, I think some of making a business case for human resources, and then getting, what you guys have talked about, change, right? And so putting together kind of that guiding coalition, or sometimes they refer to it as a planning and implementation team, whatever it is that you would call it. It's that social group that could help to support that healthy change. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Sure does. Sure
Yeah.
does. Yeah, I think anytime you can show people the dollars and cents value of why it's important to have HR involved sooner rather than later, the cost of cleanup is always going to be more expensive than the cost of doing it right the first time. So that's great.
That's right. And Rocco, our rat, the custodian, he does not like to clean up any of those messes. So do him a favor and
Yeah,
include
do
us.
Rocco a solid. Yeah.
Right on. Yeah.
Would you like to take us out today, Hermie?
Will do. Okay, everyone. Thanks a million for joining us on this episode. I'm so happy to have been here. Ben, this was just a treat.
It's been
And
a blast.
as you guys like to say at the end of everything, make change your friend. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Harmonious Workplaces. You can find Harmonious Workplaces on LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, Spotify, Amazon, Apple, and other streaming platforms. We'd love any feedback on whatever channel you find us on. Please rate, like, and share our podcast with your network, and remember to add Harmonious Workplaces to your list of favorites to get notified about each new episode. To contact Rich or Cheryl, please visit www.workbalanceconsulting.com. To connect with Ben, find him on LinkedIn or visit at www.harborsidestrategy.com.